No worries. Well, yeah, I've been in business for about 6 years here at Freedom Funding. We're in the east of Sydney. Got a small team of people here, so we've just grown to a team of 5. Yeah, it sort of got into this line of work, sort of corporate, worked in blue chip multinationals for many years, and all the meanwhile was a passionate property investor, and sort of thought, I guess it's a similar story in terms of really want to get into property one day and quit the rat race and do my own thing. And broking really aligned with my passion in terms of numbers and being able to put together solutions for people. And eventually made that change and quit the corporate gig and jumped into broker. It hasn't quite worked out as anticipated, to be entirely honest. I kind of just wanted to work a few days a week and have great work-life balance, and somehow found myself on the other end of that, which I guess is a good problem to have.
Yeah, exactly right. I was listening to James Simon on a podcast, and he's like, if you want to have a 9-to-5 job or you want a work-life balance, mortgage broking isn't the job for you. That was one of the comments. I had a bit of a chuckle after our session with Aaron yesterday, working 4 days a week. But in terms of, and we've been working together for about 18 months now. So give us a bit of an insight when you sort of reached out and to the business when we met. What was sort of going on in your business back then, if you can think back to those times?
Yeah, that was probably, I guess, the peak of where I found myself in almost a dark place, right? In terms of, I was trying to deal with this massive amount of workload. I was working 80 hours a week, 7 days a week. There was just no relief at all. I couldn't take a day off. I couldn't really take any time out for myself. I was completely in service to the business and trying to keep up with things. And I just put on my third head, who was effectively supposed to be a credit analyst. That was sort of 3 months in, and that hadn't fixed my problems. And so, I was probably at that point where I was, verging on burnout, and reached out to yourself, obviously, looking for help. And fortunately, I'm really glad I did, Ross, because things couldn't be more different today from where they were.
All right. Well, let's speak to a couple of those things, right? So, what are some of the things that you've worked on in the business that have made the biggest difference for you?
Yeah, so definitely the biggest change for me was that, I had a couple of people in the business, we had reasonable volumes and all that sort of thing. So, the business was ticking along okay, but it was completely reliant on me. So it was completely reliant on me giving, step-by-step instructions to all of my staff to say, okay, we've got the file here, you need to do this, you need to do that, and so on and so forth. No structure, we had no process, we had absolutely nothing. It was just, everything was flying around on emails. We hadn't even had the basic sort of infrastructure around Dropboxes and, Google Drive and all that sort of thing established. So that was the number one thing that, in our conversations, Ross, early days, we identified to sort of work on, and I suppose turn it from just this mess in my head as a small business that was just, trying to expand into an actual business with processes, tools like Trello that we use now, with job descriptions, everybody being clear on, turning up to work and what they're doing and what the priorities are, and, being autonomous with their roles. And we restructured a few bits and pieces there. And, that was the number one thing that shifted the business, really, created efficiency and got the best out of the team that we had at the time.
Yeah, beautiful. So there's a couple of things there, right? So what did you do for your process to make it work better, right? So you went from not having a process. What were some of the steps that you took, to make your process better?
Yeah, I suppose the thing we did was we really mapped it out and went sort of origination point where the initial contact comes from the customer through to settlement and then post settlement with reviews and whatever else. We mapped every step of that process out, and then we looked at it in the context of who needs to be responsible for each part, or how can we allocate those tasks out. And effectively what we ended up with was then building on that process into a structured system with Trello. And so we've got a 65-point process card for every single file that we work on, and those 65 points that we tick off as we go along the process, all have accountability around who needs to do them and when and so on and so forth. So that gives clarity to, what needs to be done. Everyone's really clear now on the workflows, and it's completely the polar opposite of where it was when it was all just sitting in my head.
Exactly right. So the process is key. And from a staff's point, you mentioned really having those clear job roles and descriptions has made a difference to them. So what steps did you take, and how are they feeling now?
So I guess off the back of building that process map, we almost rewrote what everybody's job description was, right? So even the job descriptions that we had at the time weren't clear. I had two loan processes essentially, and what we really did was split out that credit analyst role. So Stella, who is an ex-banker, she now fulfills that role, and she's really clear on her brief around taking the file through to basically submission and approval. And then we've got Deb, who, she was also doing similar things in terms of processing, but, that her role has now shifted, and that's more, from approval through to settlement. And, that's her responsibility to make sure all the files are flowing there. And then, from there, we've now built on that resource with additional hires within the business. So I think from an engagement perspective, this stuff, to be honest, it's not rocket science, and it's quite funny to sort of look back and go, oh, geez, I can't believe I didn't really have the basics right. And how disengaging is it to come to work and get told what to do and to be micromanaged? It's just it's a terrible situation to be in as an employee. And so, looking back at it now, it's kind of obvious that you really need to do those things, but it's quite hard to identify some of these issues when you're sitting way in the business in the detail. And being able to elevate yourself out of that day-to-day melee and look at the business and work on the business and make these changes, that's sort of enabled us to pull it out. And I think, as a result, everyone's working a lot happier than they were 18 months ago.
Love it. And so, you're saying you were working 80 hours sort of back then. What are the sort of the results have been of sort of making these changes within the business?
Yeah, so we're not necessarily doing, or haven't necessarily done more volume than we did last time, but to be honest, I'm okay with that. And we've just started to actively ramp things up now because we're building out that resource in a way where it's going to grow sustainably. So, volumes are still good. But what has changed is I guess, my lifestyle. 80 hours a week, working 7 days. I don't know if it's 80, I don't know if it's 90, I don't know how long it was, but basically from when I got up in the morning to when I went to bed, all I would do is work, try and take the kids left, right and centre whenever I had an opportunity to do so. Now I reckon I'd probably realistically only be working maybe 40, 50 hours a week, but stress levels are down, different person to who I was 18 months ago, which, you look back at it and you just think, how did we ever get through that period of time? But all the better for being able to work with you guys, Ross, and get to the position that we're in today.
Beautiful. Love it.